Hello. Right, I think we should start because we've got lots of people here. Welcome everybody to the second Stella Live, a bit different from last year when we were in London in the Saatchi Gallery, but it's lovely to see everyone here online and very nice to welcome Samantha Cameron, who's the founder and creative director of Cefinn, in case you didn't know. And we're going to talk to Samantha lots of questions, but if you have any questions that you want to ask and that I haven't put to her, do put them in the chat box and we'll try and get to some of them later on. I hope everyone can hear. I assume that you'll let us know if you can't. Right, so I'm going to start off by asking actually, Samantha, are you Sam or Samantha?
Sam. As a child, I always called myself Samantha, and my family did, and I tend to sign my name Samantha, but I mean, I've been called Sam kind of.
Okay, good. Because I
teenage onwards,
I've called you Sam for a long time, and then I thought maybe that's very presumptuous. Anyway,
no.
What has lockdown life been like in the Cameron family? I mean, first of all, where have you spent it?
So we've been down in Oxfordshire. We have a cottage there that was our constituency cottage from when Dave was MP. So, you know, my children were all born here and we've been coming here every weekend for 20 years.
And have you managed to work from there? I mean,
yes.
How's that been?
We're very lucky because a very nice company called Gigaclear.
Yes, I've got them too, and they're better than the internet I had in London.
It's amazing. I think the rows we would have had in the family was with 3 different people watching different Netflix, me on Zoom, would have been unbelievable. And so Dave and I fighting over the Wi-Fi when we're working. So luckily Gigaclear saved us from that because the Wi-Fi, it'll probably crash any second, but it has been really good.
So how has it been? I mean, you've had to combine the home, the business, and presumably homeschooling as well. What's the division of labour been like? I mean, is it organized? Is it very strict division of labour? Who does what?
Yeah, I think we all know. I mean, my children are. I'd love to say they were great at chores and helping around the house, but they are hopeless. They're quite good at laying.
What are their
ages
now?
Of clearing.
What are their
They are 16, 14, and 9. And actually, my son is probably more helpful than the girls. So yes, no. So I mean, I work from 9:15 in the morning. I'm at my desk on Microsoft Teams with sort of my team at work, and I finish at about 6. I get up quite early because I came obsessed by cleaning. I think if you're spending a lot of time in your home, which you might not normally if you're in an office every day. So I've been doing a lot of cleaning, a lot of washing up, and David's been doing all the cooking. I'm incredibly lucky. I mean, talking to friends, I think the thing they found most stressful about lockdown with having their husband and children at home is having to kind of plan, think about, shop, cook 3 meals a day.
What are his master dishes?
We've had really varied. We have something called a noodle paella. We're very lucky we can order fish from our local shop in the village. It's a sort of that we used to have in Lanzarote, and we eventually managed to persuade the restaurateur to give us the recipe. We've done fajitas. We've had a lot of chicken casseroles, inevitably. What else? Barbecues, sort of barbecues. He likes a barbie. So I'm lucky. I haven't really had to think about shopping for food or planning meals, but I have done a lot of washing up and a lot of clearing up.
You're very forbearing. And so do you work in your kitchen or your bed? I mean, do you have a study? And
no, we don't have a kind of, it's sort of, I mean, it's spacious, but it's fairly open plan, and there's not a kind of office room. So it's a bit of a mixture. We all swap around a bit. And we have a little.
Sorry, carry on.
Well, so depending on who needs to be sort of private. So I'm actually in the bedroom at the moment because it's the only place it could be totally quiet. But otherwise, because I'm mainly working with my team at work, it's sort of fairly relaxed. It doesn't matter if the children are walking past or, you know, whatever. So sometimes I'm at the kitchen table. Sometimes I'm in the sitting room, which is a bit quieter. We sort of swap around. We do have a little playroom. So
what about homeschooling? Because you've got GCSEs right down to I get so confused with the years, but Florence.
Yes, so she's year 5.
So does Dave teach them politics? And you?
No. No. That would be. Well, I wish. I mean, there's definitely been much more discussion around the table about kind of all kinds of issues, because we've been sitting down for meals, at least twice a day. So I'm really lucky. Our childcare Michelle didn't want to go back to Glasgow, where she comes from, because she was worried about her dad, and so she's locked down with us. So she has been homeschooling Flo. So again, I think I've had a lucky lockdown in many respects. And then my son is doing Zoom meetings, so his school will take care of that. And then Nancy was supposed to be doing GCSE, so she's the slightly tricky one, because she's not actually been having to do anything, which, I mean, she's been painting, she's very creative, so she's been painting and other bits and pieces. But I think she's the one where the rest of us are in quite a routine. And so trying to work out how much of a routine to force her to be in or not has been a little bit tricky.
Do you find that with your teenagers that they're very, very politically engaged, maybe more so than we were when we were their age? I don't mean about sort of Labour or Conservative, but I mean all the issues that have been coming up around us at the moment, Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ with J.K. Rowling. I mean, do they talk about that a lot?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's the massive change with social media. And also my kids are at school in London, which is obviously kind of very diverse, and kind of they're all very engaged with kind of politics. And I was brought up in the middle of nowhere in the country and went to school in a provincial town and watched kind of Jackanory or whatever. And so I think you weren't as engaged with the issues, but on social media, there's, it's discussed all of the time. So I think they definitely, without any question, and we talk about it a lot, whatever the issues are, at meal times, and we can be a bit curious about what they think, but something we don't really understand because we're old.
It's very useful having that generation around.
Yeah,
and they definitely keep us on our toes. So working from home for you, I mean, what you do is so varied, because so 1 minute you'll have your business hat on, and then there's a lovely Cefinn image there, which we'll come back to that in a minute. We'll just keep it up there. So you have your business hat on, you'll be poring over your accounts book. I know you love your accounts book.
I love a spreadsheet.
You love a spreadsheet. But then you're also designing, and you're having to do fittings. Now, how on earth has that worked? How has that worked during lockdown? Obviously, you haven't been able to do fittings, but are you one of those designers who likes to work on a fit model, or is it all on paper?
No, so we do. I mean, I do quite a lot of work on the fit model. I mean, I think you have to see the toile and see it on the model and see how the fabric hangs, and that's been really challenging. So one of the ways we've tackled it is that I've gone up to the office and unpacked any new samples we've had back from the factory or the sample maker, tried them on myself to get a kind of really good feel. I'm a size 10, which is what we grade from, so it might not fit me perfectly because I'm not the fit model, but I can get a sense, and then we'll send it off to the fit model, and then she'll talk through what she thinks. But it's definitely been challenging because the pattern cutter would normally be there kind of pinning alterations and that sort of thing. So that's definitely been the most challenging. Everything else, I think, we've worked really well as a team and probably been kind of more productive and probably communicated more, because it's quite intimate, the Zoom thing. And when you're all together we're in Teams meeting, there's not the distraction there is when there's lots of stuff going on in the office, I think.
So have you been having Zoom meetings every day with the team?
Yeah, so we're actually on Microsoft Teams, and it's sort of on all day. So anyone can call me or text me or whatever at any point of the day. So I am sort of at my desk kind of most of the day. And we have fixed meetings. We have a morning catch up at 9:15, etc., etc. So it's been very structured. Were you able to structure it immediately lockdown happened, or did it take you a while to find your rhythm? It definitely took us a few days, but no, I think we got there quite quickly. It was you were dealing with so much stuff at the end of March that it was sort of quite essential that we were kind of on it, because obviously the impact of COVID on the business, or on any business, on everyone, from, you know, getting everyone home working, etc., was so extreme that you had to get into a kind of routine pretty quickly.
Did you change the way you dressed when you started working from home? Because obviously you have a fashion business, so while many people went straight into sort of elasticated joggers, it might have been strange for you to do that, because you had to kind of maintain the idea that clothes matter. I mean, indeed they do matter. What was your uniform the first week or so of lockdown?
I'm quite compartmentalized. From the moment we decided we were going to start meetings at 9:15 in the morning, I've been, you know, hair, makeup, in a dress from 9:15, because it just makes me feel like I'm in the zone. I mean, so I might have been up from 6 in my kind of gym kit, kind of cleaning the floor or trying to go for a run or whatever it was. But I like being, so I would say, except for maybe a couple of times when I've been a bit late for whatever reason, I've been, you know, kind of ready for work. And I'm quite compartmentalized in sort of everything I do in life. And so I think I need to feel like I'm in the kind of work zone. And for me, that is about what I wear.
Okay, so what
I
mean, you know, there's been so much talk about dressing from the waist up, and I think that will still be relevant even as we ease out of lockdown, because you know, we are going to be using Zoom and various video conferencing. We'll probably mix them in, don't you feel? I mean, as well.
Definitely. Yeah, no question. I mean, I think one of the big changes is that I think a lot of, you know, I'll be delighted that, you know, the people who I work with at work who have really long commutes in London and out of the office can work from home 2 days a week. I mean, I think we've all proved to each other that it's totally possible.
Will you maintain that?
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent we'll expect people to be in the office maybe 2-3 days a week. But I mean, I'd love the fact that they're not commuting 2 hours a day on public transport into the office. It was always something I felt quite guilty about, because the office is sort of next, you know, it's 10 minutes walk from my home. But, you know, it's exhausting if you're commuting, you know, minimum of 2 hours a day. So I'll be delighted if, you know,
what's your sort of what's your fail-safe working from home uniform?
I think probably quite a loose, comfy dress. I say I am quite kind of, what's the word? I'm quite a matchy person. So I would feel quite uncomfortable if I was wearing a pretty blouse with my kind of sort of joggers on the bottom. I have to feel together. I have to feel like the whole outfit sits together. So probably a loosish dress is what I've been wearing most of the time. I've really enjoyed wearing print and colour because it's a bit upbeat. You know, I want to feel, you know, there are bits of lockdown that obviously been a bit hard and a bit depressing. And so I think what I wear makes me feel better. So I'm feeling colourful and pretty, and the print's pretty and feminine. It just makes me, it puts me in a better mood.
There was a question earlier about prints and whether you get more confident, whether you need to work up confidence to wear prints. Did you always like patterns?
No. So, well, before Dave became leader of the Tory party, I was very kind of neutral, kind of grey, black, navy. And then obviously when you're, you know, a bit more in the public eye and you're doing events where you're trying to either promote the country or a charity, you know, to get a good photo, you know, wearing print and colour is really important. And so, and there were amazing designers at the time who I was friends with, whose clothes I could wear, like Erdem and Peter Pilotto and Roxanda, who very much worked with print and colour. And so it did totally change how I, you know, how I felt about wearing print and colour, having been quite a kind of minimalist.
And actually, when you first launched Cefinn, which was what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, 3.5, I think.
There weren't many patterns, were there? So was that
no? That wasn't like a conscious thing. I think I launched the business quite quickly, and it takes a lot of time to develop new fabrics and to develop print. And we designed the prints in house. There was quite a lot of colour initially, but kind of plain colours, not so much the print. And it just, you know, it just takes time to find the right suppliers, find the right fabrics. You know, it can take a year from the start of development for something actually to kind of hit the customer on the website. So it's just, yeah, it just took a while. But, you know, I love the print and it does really well, and I really enjoy designing it.
What was the original idea for launching Cefinn?
It was, I think I worked, I was a creative director, but I was sort of at kind of board level at Smythson, where I worked for many years. And I think never felt comfortable wearing very executive or corporate outfits. I had, lots of small children, so paying for kind of childcare, etc. So I didn't want to kind of spend a fortune. And I did find it quite challenging finding clothes that had a slightly more creative, relaxed feel, but were still work appropriate, and also had that kind of quality and performance aspect. So you could kind of wash them, and you didn't have to take everything to the dry cleaner, because I just never had the time. It would sort of sit in the corner. Anything that needed to be dry cleaned, either sit in the dry cleaner for months or sit in a sort of pile in the corner of my bedroom. I'd say, I'll sort it out tomorrow, and then you never would because you were too busy. So I think it was around performance and quality, and a clothes that you could wear to work, but also use for other occasions. So wear at the weekend or wear in the evenings, or go from work to a drink with friends without feeling like you were looking very kind of corporate or executive, which is just not my, it's not my kind of personality.
At the start of lockdown, what happened? I mean, did people stop buying altogether, or were there certain things that surprised you that continued to sell?
No, our shopper. I think the scary thing was more the department stores and the warehouses. So 50% of our business is wholesale. So that's selling to boutiques and department stores, etc. And a lot of their warehouses closed for whatever reason. I mean, I think a lot of it just COVID related, the health and safety reasons. And so that was very scary, because suddenly you've got huge amounts of stock coming in from your suppliers, that you're kind of is sitting in your warehouse, and you can't ship it, and therefore you're not going to get paid for it. And so and a lot of that has been resolved. I mean, but there are orders that were cancelled that we won't ever get paid for, or businesses that have really struggled. In terms of our e-com has held up quite well, actually, pretty much like for like on last year, but we had a lot of trunk shows and customer events and a pop-up store. So between those and wholesale, it has had a very dramatic effect on how we think we'll perform financially.
But what sort of things were people buying? Because obviously weddings, Ascot would have been quite big drivers of sales for you. They're
definitely. So we've definitely been selling. So in the first few weeks, particularly, normally if you compared to last year, the top 10 bestsellers would all have been dresses, and this year it was all tops and shirting, and we introduced a new scarf. So it was a very dramatic change. We could really see that. So we were doing more transactions. But at a kind of lower order value, and just not so much the dresses. The dresses have started to move again in the last kind of month or so. But I mean, if you compared year on year, a really dramatic change.
Have you been able to be how responsive have you been able to be to what people have been buying? Because presumably you've got fabric sitting in your warehouse. So
yes. No, I mean, for us, the lead times are just too long. So you're not, I mean, we've been responsive in terms of what we're doing for autumn and winter, because a lot of that wasn't manufactured yet. There were some styles that we cancelled that were coming in for summer because they hadn't quite been made by the factories. And so, assuming that it was going to be a kind of tough summer, we cancelled a few styles. We didn't want to be left with lots of stock we couldn't sell. But other than that, our lead times are fairly long. So we couldn't suddenly come up with a collection middle of COVID that was completely different from what we were anticipating. It's definitely affected how we're thinking about the collections that we've since designed for winter and for spring, which we're selling now. And then I'm working on what we call summer now. So you're definitely thinking quite hard about how the world's changed and what effect that will have on what you're designing.
So what effect will that have on what you're designing?
Well, there's a sort of slight confusion. And so we're sort of doing two things, really. I think designing things that you feel you could wear both at home and in the office. I mean, versatility has always been really core to the brand. Clothes that could work in lots of different situations is the sort of core, we hope, of what we do. So I think really focusing on that more. And then we're a bit torn. I think I talked to someone the other day, a party planner, who said that every venue in the whole of the UK is basically booked already for weddings and parties next year because of cancellations from this year. So I think it's like, is everyone going to be going to a party or a wedding every weekend? And so therefore we should be designing kind of dresses for that and really go for it. Or will we be in lockdown again? So really focus on blouses and, more comfy trousers. And so we're sort of doing a bit of everything, actually. Because I think that's what's been so weird about the last few months is none of us can plan. Everything's so unknown. It's a real challenge.
Will you produce as much as you had last September?
No. So we cut our autumn collection that they hadn't started manufacturing quite dramatically straight away, where we could negotiate with the factories. And spring and winter are much smaller collections. Not quite sure about summer yet. It'll definitely be smaller than this year because there's a lot of stock that people haven't been able to sell. You know, peak, I think for fashion, March, April, May, June is kind of peak time. And obviously if people are not traveling and they're not going to parties and Ascot or whatever it might be, then we're all going to be left with stock that we're going to have to sort of sell next year. So in terms of newness, we are designing more newness, but not as much as we would have done had it been a normal year.
Do you think that trends will still be relevant? By which I mean those where we all used to say, oh, it's it's leopard print or it's knee length, or do you think it will just be about offering a wide variety of different brands offering different things for their customers?
I think the market's been moving that way anyway for the last few years. So I think that definitely will be the case. And I think there'll be, a sense, because there will be stock that people have designed for this summer that they may not have bothered even showing to the customer. They think, oh, well, let's save it for next summer. I think it'll be difficult to have very fixed trends because it'll be a bit of a mix of things that they thought they would sell this summer. So I would imagine trends won't be as strong as they might be normally next year. And I think talking to a lot of the other designers, they're all doing smaller collections, if they're a catwalk brand, and things for the autumn and spring. So, I mean, no one has a crystal ball, but I think you're right. It'll be a bit more fluid and a bit more customer buy now, wear now based.
Have you been able to talk much with other designers?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's sort of 2 or 3 who I rang, particularly in the early stages when we were deciding what to do about stock and what to do about kind of what they were doing about their orders for autumn and winter and sizes of their collection. Yes, definitely. I talked to a few other designers and I knew they all were in very much the same kind of thought process that we do, that we were. So it was really good to have that feeling that you weren't kind of alone, and that other people were doing similar things to mitigate the kind of damage from COVID to their businesses.
And there's a very interesting question that I can see here, which is about whether you would consider moving to a model which other smaller brands are starting to do, which is waiting for people to order things. So, you might wait to have 20 orders and then making the item rather than just making them, putting them out there and hoping for the best.
Yeah, that's definitely something we've discussed. It's challenging at our price point because the factories have minimums, so you might have to make 200 of something, which is a lot for a brand our size.
Yeah,
but we've definitely talked about maybe talking to our customers about things that we've designed and samples in advance and saying, do you like it? Do you not like it? So having a bit more idea before we place orders about what our customer, is really reacting well to. It's challenging though, because you're on a very tight sort of timetable in fashion if you're doing 4 seasons a year, which we do. So there's not much time to do that, but it's definitely something that in a perfect world we would aim to do more of.
So what happens to the stock that you don't sell? This is another question, and it's something that we always want to know. So you've done your sale, but there's still a few stragglers left over. What happens to it?
I mean, some of it there are various kind of avenues that you can sell your stock to, various kind of online sale, end of line kind of retailers that do flash sales and that sort of thing. We've obviously always had a very good, because we launched with Net-a-Porter, we've always had a very good relationship with Outnet. And before now, so it's not really been an issue. We haven't been left with lots of stock, but we will. But this year will be more challenging, and because we will, we grew 100% last financial year. We were planning to grow about 50% this financial year, which won't happen. And so you buy stock for what your sales targets are going to be. So we're talking to lots of people about that, and we'll obviously find innovative ways to try and communicate with our customer. And that we haven't done that much discounting until sale, but we will look at that, because obviously what you don't want is just to go in the bin. I mean, that would be terrible. And it's one of the reasons why.
I think there's a question here on the side about what happens to some other brands have been accused of burning stock, but I know they've banned that in France. I don't think that happens here anymore.
No,
it's not acceptable.
I wouldn't know, because we've never been in that kind of situation, and it's not something that we would definitely. I mean, I'm a patron of SmartWorks. So, for instance, if we were left with stock, we would, we'd give it to charities, for instance, that might be giving it to women like at SmartWorks who are trying to find a job and going to job interviews. I'm sure there are lots of creative ways in which you could find a way that your stock was going to a good home without having to burn it. But luckily we're relatively small still, because we only started 3 years ago. So, but I can imagine that for much bigger companies, it's going to be a real issue. And it's one of the reasons why we've done smaller collections for next year, because even just from a sustainability point of view, you sort of feel now is the wrong time just to be making masses of stuff. It's not the I don't think the next year is a good moment to be making lots more stuff in the world.
Yes. So what do you think of fashion shows? Because obviously Cefinn isn't a fashion catwalk brand, but you were an ambassador for London Fashion Week for a few years and went to a lot of shows. I mean, do you think that Fashion Week model is outdated? Because there's a lot of conversation now between the
I think they were, even before COVID, I think people were having conversations, there's a lot of travel involved, which I think people were finding increasingly expensive. And obviously it's not great from a sustainability point of view if you've got people coming all over the world to Paris or London. I think it's, with a much more sort of diverse fashion market, sort of smaller businesses like ours with e-com, it's very expensive to do a fashion show, and I think obviously if you've got big fashion shows, you can't have them all the time. So that how do you tackle that buy now, wear now? I think there will still be an element of that, because it's a very different experience being at a show and seeing the product in front of you than it is seeing it on online. So I think that will remain, but it'll be really interesting to see, because certainly in the near term, people are just not going to have the budgets, or will be too nervous, or be unable to travel to across the world to shows in the same way that they normally would.
If people spend less on fashion after lockdown because of not having the money, not feeling confident about spending. Is there a way you can lower prices, or is that just not possible and doesn't fit with the standards you want to maintain? What do you do?
Yeah, you can definitely look at fabrics that are less expensive, because fabric is a huge part of the cost. I mean, for us, other than the fabric, it would be quite challenging, because there's particular factories that we work with, and we want really
where do you mainly make?
So we make a lot of our fabric comes from Japan and Korea, and then from Europe, and then we mainly make in Portugal, Eastern Europe and China. So all over, actually. We don't currently make in India or Vietnam or anywhere, but we are very strict about the factories that we use, and they have to be really strictly audited. And so which means that your pricing structure is not that flexible. So it's really more about designing into the cost and the fabrics that you use.
There's a question here from Maureen Littleboy about whether the next collection will contain bright colours to make people more cheerful, which I think is interesting, because colours definitely have an impact on mood, don't they?
Yes, no, we're definitely going to have lots of print and bright colours in the collections coming up, because I think they do. I think they definitely, influence your mood and how you feel. And I think we're all going to need sort of cheering up in one way or another.
What colours were popular in the past 3 months when we were all?
Well, I'm very flattered that you're wearing a Cefinn dress today, but actually,
and actually the colour
people
you're
are
very,
wearing,
very observant, because they've noticed that it matches one of the pictures.
Pictures. So that colour, that particular kind of blue colourway in that print has been unbelievably successful, as has the print that I'm wearing now. And I think there's something quite jewel-like about both of them, but they're wearable at the same time, which is, I think, why people have liked them, because they're quite sort of saturated and sort of lovely colours, but without being too scary to wear.
One of the things I found with friends is when they're looking for dresses, it's very easy at a certain age with all these floral ruffled dresses to look like a milkmaid. Yeah. And although you think, oh, that's a good dress because it's got sleeves and it's long and it's providing plenty of coverage, actually they only work on very young women. Are you very aware of designing for across the age spectrum, or do you think about body shapes?
I think about body shapes. I mean, I think our customer is 25 to 75, so we're not trying to cater for a kind of 15 to 25, and probably our core customer started about 30. So you're definitely this was a brand that wasn't trying to appeal to teenagers, and so you're very much thinking about what women, I'm in my late 40s, and the core of our customer probably is in their kind of late 30s to early 50s. And so you are thinking very much about what, that you might want a longer sleeve, or things that will accentuate the good bits, but you don't necessarily want everything on show. So we think a lot about that, and definitely kind of body shapes, trying to cater for different body shapes. I mean, I'm quite tall.
Yes,
I'm not especially slim, but I'm flat-chested.
Susan Parker's asking about petite. I'm very small, Susan. I'm 5'4", and they're long on me, but they do scale down quite well, I think.
Yes, not all of them do, but some of them we really do focus on ones that will work for petite. And we're lucky, but there's my head of production is petite, and one of the girls who works in our store is very petite, and so I try and get as much feedback from them as possible about the styles that they can wear or that they wouldn't wear, because I think that's been one of the, I think as people know that I'm quite tall, there's an assumption that I'm very much designing for tall people, and there is an aspect to that, because if you are very tall, it is quite challenging sometimes to buy things that don't make you feel slightly like a kind of overgrown schoolgirl. But on the other hand, we are very focused on the fact that that there's a huge petite customer, or more petite customer out there, and I think that's the challenge, because you might be trying to find your customer, you might be quite focused on a certain customer because of their values or how they spend their life, but they've all got different body shapes.
Sorry, somebody's just told me my buttons undone, but I think it's okay. I don't think there's too much.
I haven't seen your bra
yet. Thank you, Michelle. Do you think, because obviously there's a lot of focus on growing locally, bringing back jobs to this country. Can you source more fabrics here? Is there any way you can make the brand more British? Was a question.
It's a really good question, and it's something that I looked at very hard when we launched the business. But there was a very particular price point that I was going for. I didn't want to be at kind of luxury designer prices. I wanted to be, somewhere at the kind of top end of the high street, and that was a very kind of fixed view. And we found it very challenging to find any factories who could work with us within that price point. So if anyone here who knows anyone, please let them get in touch. And also a slight issue where, because we don't have a very established industrial fashion industry here, some of the factories that we looked at, if I'm being really honest, would not have passed our audits, which I think people would assume that if you audited a factory in the UK, it would all be kind of perfect because it's the UK. And if you audited a factory in China, that it might not be. But actually, that's not necessarily the case, which was news to me, because if you are working in a country where there is a lot of manufacturing of fashion. You'll have really high quality, factories, and we just don't have a kind of big enough industry here necessarily to have that spread. So say we struggled with the audits a bit at some of the factories that we looked at here. But I'm not saying we found or looked for every factory there might be in the UK. So we're always open. So if anyone knows anyone who'd like to get in contact with us, then let me know.
One of the things I've noticed over the last year is that a lot of women who appear on TV, sort of broadcasters, have been wearing your clothes. And I wonder whether you found, because you were photographed a lot when you were in Number 10, whether you learnt tricks for clothes that just look good on a screen, and what those tricks might be. Not tricks, but tips, for dressing, because I think so often we dress for a mirror, and then when we see a picture of ourselves, we think, that doesn't look as good as I thought it did.
As we thought. I think it's that. And also, yes, I think that's definitely the case. And I think it's also because I'm trying to design for women that might want to wear those clothes for different occasions, whether it's going to the office or an event or a charity lunch, and then with a kind of denim jacket or something at the weekend. And so nothing that we're doing is very extreme. I'm not going to be doing huge frills or huge prints or flowers. And so I suppose, and we do have a lot of newsreaders who wear our clothes. And I think it's probably that kind of, they're feminine enough and interesting enough that they don't feel boring, and they can have bright colours without it being too distracting. Is what we talk about it a bit in the office, because it wasn't something we were necessarily expecting. But I think it's that we kind of bridge a fine line between being very extreme, but also, not boring. And so you give a bit of colour and.
Yeah, sorry. The people are asking about the audit. What sort of what criteria you have for your audits? And somebody else, Fiona Motshaw, has made this comment about, sadly, there are sweatshops in the UK. And I think that's the point. I don't know if that was made explicit, but that's what you're saying, isn't it? Just because
yes, no, that's what I'm saying, is that when we audited factories in the UK, they didn't pass the audit, and that might be around health and safety, or it could be, when you do an audit, there's so many different things that you're looking at, kind of pay, health.
Was that an audit that you did you draw up that audit internally, or can one go somewhere to get an audit for your company? No,
and you're going to ask me, and it begins with S, and I can't remember what it's called, but there is a kind of body that kind of does those audits, and you pay for them to do that. And I can't remember quite what it's called. And also, actually, my head of production, by luck, is a sort of trained auditor, but so she's done some of it, but there are kind of fixed bodies out there. I'm not getting the right word, where they set the audits and the levels that we all work to.
There's a question here about how we make the high street more exciting going forward. And I know that you used to love shopping. Do you still go shopping?
Yes, I do less. I used to work in central London for many years on Bond Street, so I could go to Oxford Street in my lunch hour. And now my office is in W10. I'm quite near Westfield, but I often don't have the time. And I do love shopping. I think there's a sort of an aesthetic thing about going shopping, the windows, how the shops are done up, seeing how things are merchandised, being able to kind of touch and feel the fabrics. I think is really important with fashion. And I think we've still not really worked out digitally how to give that same experience online that you get in a store.
Have you ventured into onto the high street yet?
I haven't actually. I've been in undercoverings, but I've been in the office all the time. I did go down to our pop-up store when we were first reopening it, but I didn't actually go into any other shops at that stage because they weren't yet open. But maybe next week I will. I'll get a chance.
Who would you see as your competitors? That's an interesting question from, oh, sorry, it's disappeared. But I think that is an interesting question, because I think there aren't many brands doing in your niche. which is clothes that work for work and occasions without looking too high maintenance, too corporate.
I mean, I suppose you hope that you don't have any direct competition, because otherwise what would be the point of having started your business? Is you're trying to do something different, and we don't all just need more stuff in the world. So I think it could be anything from, LK Bennett to Joseph to Mars or Zandro. It might be Isabel Moran to Toile. I mean, none of them is exactly the same, so it's always a difficult question. So I suppose you're thinking that your competitors are, but I think price is a really big thing when people shop. And so I think it's probably about people that are in the similar price bracket to you, and then you're all offering a slightly different kind of style alternative.
Good question here about masks. Are you going to make, I mean, you didn't make any masks during
No, we've got some arriving, actually. We do have some arriving at the end of this week that we will be, I think, giving away in our store. And then we're also giving some to a charity that we will be selling online. So, yeah, please have a look at our website.
And are they from sort of fabrics you had in stock?
Yes.
And will you so there'll be matching masks with dresses? This seems to be a bit of a thing.
Yes. We didn't have so much spare fabric that we've had lots of dresses that you can match with the masks, but we do have some because we wanted to make them quite quickly, and so yeah. But yes, there'll be an element of that.
What you've always been very sort of diverse in your branding, and that you've used models of quite a lot of different ethnicities. Going forward, how will you ensure that you can maintain that in your actual amongst your employees?
I think you're always, I mean, whenever you're recruiting, it obviously is something that's front of mind. But at the end of the day, I think you have to take the best person for the role. And I think sometimes when we've been recruiting recently, we haven't had as kind of broad a spectrum of people as we'd like to choose from, which can be really kind of challenging. I mean, also we'd like more men in the business. We're kind of mainly women, so it's not just ethnic diversity, and there is some ethnic diversity in our team, which is very small. But also, we only have one man in the team, so I'd quite like some more men, which I know is kind of that's different from what everyone else is saying. I mean, in other industries, you'd be saying more women. But I think, and it was the same at Smythson. I think if you work in retail and design, it can be really female focused. And but it's always something that's front of mind with us. I launched the brand as a London brand. London is this amazing kind of merchant city. That's what's so exciting about it. That's what I love about it, is the cultural diversity, the fact we've been this great trading city for hundreds of years. And so if our company at whatever level didn't reflect that, I would be, I would be really disappointed, because I'm a Londoner, and that's what I love about it, and we're a London brand. And so it's one of the reasons why I launched with a black model, was because I felt she represented what we were as a kind of London brand. She had a very London look, in my feel, and I think that's really important.
Sam, we're running over, but there's one more. I mean, there's loads of questions I haven't got to, but there's an interesting one here about whether you think we'll go more casual in the workplace. You were saying earlier, it's really hard to call this. Will we want to go out in ball gowns next summer?
Yes.
Or will we want to be in joggers? But for workwear, what's your sense? Where, if you had to put your money?
I think it will definitely go a bit more casual and comfortable, I would think, would be my assumption. Partly because I think people will be working from home more. And so you're not going to be able to afford to have a whole sort of different wardrobe for working at home on Zoom than going in the office. And you're not necessarily going to want to wear a kind of suit when you're working from home. But most of us don't have the budget to have, you might be 2 days a week wearing a suit and then the rest of the time in something more comfortable. So I think it will lean in that direction. And then interestingly, something that we learned today from one of our landlords is that they are encouraging their staff to, they've had to change their, what was very smart sort of clothing policy, because they want people, because of COVID, to only wear things that are washable.
Interesting.
So obviously a kind of wool suit and silk tie in their case wasn't really gonna, that wasn't gonna work. So you can't put it in the wash. So they've changed, because I hadn't really thought about that. But obviously in the coming months, your clothes being, clean of COVID is a kind of issue if we're all coming back to the office.
So washable fabrics will be a real consideration for you when you're...
Yes. Which is a challenge. I think that's why the sustainability thing for fashion brands is so complex, because high performance fabrics and fabrics that wash well and don't shrink and don't need ironing are inherently less sustainable, say, than 100% cotton or silks or 100% wool. Wool suiting you can't really wash. So I think that's one of our challenges, and why we have to work so closely with the fabric mills and the factories that we're working with. And they are moving and they are investing in the technology in terms of recycled polyesters, etc. But it's slow. And, for lots of people, wearing cotton or linen all of the time, if you're trying to look smart, isn't necessarily an option, or if you don't have time to spend ironing for hours on end. So it's something we think about all the time, but it is complex and it is challenging.
Is your sales intel telling you that it's the death of the blazer, do you think? Which I love.
No,
good.
I don't think
Good.
so. Well, I mean, not in my world anyway. I hope not. I just think blazers, you can wear them with jeans, you can wear them with a dress, you can, I mean, I love a shoulder pad. So no, I really hope not. And I think a blazer is just, for lots of time in the UK, it's, it's not, you've always got to have some kind of cover up. And, cardis can feel a bit frumpy, whereas you always feel kind of pulled together and a bit cool in a blazer. And it's pretty rare that you can go outside and think, I don't need any kind of coat, jacket, jumper. I mean, it might be at the moment the case, but it's pretty unusual.
I'm really relieved to hear that. Sam, thank you so much. We could go on talking for a lot longer, and we've got so many questions left on. Well, I think we got through a lot of them. Really lovely comments from the audience. Thank you so much. You've been
pleasure.
You've been great, and the audience have been fabulous. And well, hopefully next year when we do Stella Live, we'll be doing
live.
It with actual people live. But thank you all very much.
And thank you so much for having me, and best of luck with the rest of the event.
Thank you.